We are emotionally connected to it. Humans, we have this need again to make order out of chaos, right? Our brains just can't make sense of the crazy things, the insane things that we see, right? Because we're emotionally attached to it, we find patterns where there are none. We assess variance as or a variant as a thing we can go and attack or recoil from. Okay. Well, here we are in session 9 of Gambling 301. This is the series that's all about the math of gambling. And in this session, we're going to talk about variance. And, I always say the house always wins. And why do I say that? Because there's so many things that are kind of stacked up against us and in the house's favor. This one's on us. We're going to talk about variance and trends over the next couple of sessions here. And here's the deal, guys. Order, chaos, and our need to make sense of the insane. And here's the problem, right? Things are insane at the casino, right? You're going to see crazy things at a roulette table, at a craps table, weird runs on baccarat, and crazy good or crazy bad shoes in blackjack, right? But here's the deal: as players and people, we are unable, as humans, I think, to contend with randomness, and that's part of the nature, I guess, of it. So we try and apply logic to things, but we see things that can't possibly happen, and we create patterns. We create things out of nothing to try and explain the unexplainable. And then we try and adapt to it. But guess what? The casino doesn't do that. We've seen the law of big numbers. We've seen how the house edge works. We've seen how short and long sessions play in their favor. They don't care about any of this stuff, but we certainly do, right? As players, our brain gets in the way of us sometimes, and it's our inability to understand some of these basics. And some of the things I want to talk about here are variance and trends. And I want to get a couple definitions out of the way here before we get going. So a variant with a T, this is the current state of the game, right? It refers specifically to the pattern or the sequence of things that you're seeing right now. Like your feet are in the ground at the table. What are you seeing? I can guarantee you what you're not seeing is pure probability. You're seeing something different than that. That is a variant that you're currently living in. And you'll see soon, we're always in a variant. Now, how do you explain that? Variance itself is the measurement. It's how far away are we in this current session from what we expected to see. If you're seeing, for example, in craps, 7 sevens out of 36 instead of 6, you're at some percentage off what we expected. That is the variance of the session. And variance is normally expressed in a number, obviously, but we refer to them as positive or negative, a positive variance or a negative variance to kind of describe the state that we're in. And the last thing we'll talk about here today, and actually we're going to go into this in deeper in a later session, is trends. Variance and trends are often conflated, but here's the deal. Trends are predictable patterns of data or outcomes or whatever it is. It's based on some kind of influence. Trends are always, I like to say, driven by something. So you think about the market, you think about like the stock market. The market can trend up or trend down, but it's always based on something, right? Interest rates change or a war happens, God forbid, right? And the market, the people who are buying and selling, they panic or they get bullish or bearish, and things happen as a result of some outside influence, right? Real estate markets have the same thing with regards to interest rates. Social has the same thing that goes on with the social trending. There's always a force behind it. Variance, typically speaking, is what we're talking about in terms of randomness. And I think that's where I think a lot of people kind of go off the rails with it a little bit. Anyway, here we go. Variance in gambling, it refers simply again to how much outcomes in a game of chance can vary from the expected value. What is the variation from where we should be? Are we here or are we here? Based on what we expected to see. Statistically speaking, statisticians will say it's a measure of how risky or unpredictable a game currently is, right? The higher the variance, the more ups and downs you might experience. So when we see those short runs where the spikes are really high, right? We looked at 100 outcomes versus 10,000 outcomes. You're going to see wild variance, big swings. That's how we describe it because it's the current state of a small set of outcomes. And again, with law of large numbers, the longer we go, the closer you get to infinity, the less variance there typically is in that bigger swing. Now, the variant itself, in the context of some set of outcomes, it really refers to the outcome set that you're looking at. So what's happening right in front of you? It's the current set of, in craps, we'll say 36 rolls, the current slice of 36 rolls. On a roulette game, it's the current slice of 38 spins. And what did you see in that? So in simple terms, variance tells you how much the outcomes will fluctuate overall, while a variant refers to the particular pattern or sequence of outcomes within those fluctuations that you're seeing kind of in front of you. So one is kind of like a way of looking at and describing what you're seeing. How far away are we? And the variance is the calculation of that. Some fun facts about these things. And I think, when you look at, and again, I'll give you an example here. Now, kind of as we're going here, I'm going to be, you'll see on video, I'm rolling some dice to sort of give us a sample set of 36 numbers. And you're going to see in the end of that, of course, we're not going to be a perfect 36 number outcome according to probability. But here's some fun facts. We're always in a variant, right? That rollout that I'm doing is going to prove that to you. You're going to see that you can roll 36 numbers with a set of dice. You can spin 38 times on a roulette wheel. You will never get a perfect, every single number comes up once on a roulette table. It'll never happen, right? That's an interesting thing. You're always going to be in some kind of weird variant, and you have to kind of be aware of that. Trends, by the way, create a variant. If there were no trends, the stock market would stay flat forever, right? Because there are trends at work, every trend that happens results in a variant occurring. But the opposite of that is not true. Not every variant is caused by a trend. We live in a world here in casino gambling of independent trials. Every roll of the dice is independent. Every spin of the wheel is independent. Every hand in blackjack or baccarat or UTH, whatever you're playing, they're all independent trials. Every single thing is independent. There can be, therefore, no trend. So not every variant, which we are always in, is caused by some trend. But, streaks and clusters are how variance manifests itself. We see these things. We see a series of reds or a series of blacks or highs or lows or a lot of sevens or a lot of, consecutive blackjacks, right? You see those things happen, right? More baccarat, bunch of players in a row, whatever. Those streaks and clusters are how variance comes to be, right? It's the way that it presents itself to you. That's what you see. A choppy baccarat table or player, player, banker, banker, player, player, banker, banker. Feels like a pattern, doesn't it? But it's not. It's not a pattern. Patterns repeat predictably. Variance manifests itself randomly. And I think that's an interesting thing to say. And honestly, this last point here, I think is really important. And it's a conceptual hurdle that we all kind of have to cross, which is this: everybody's variant is different. Okay. And let me give you an example of what I mean by that. Let's assume that I'll just pick roulette for an example. We're at roulette and I'm at the table. I roll up to the table, and let's say that we are all going to see exactly 38 spins and go home. That's our thing. I walk up, red, 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 5 reds in a row, right? That's amazing. And let's say that within that sequence, we see 3 21s or something like that, right? So one number has repeated a few times. I'm in a variant, right? I'm in a positive variant for a red predisposed player. I'm in a positive variant for a number, whatever it is, right? You walk up after spin number 8 and start your 38 rolls there. Well, guess what? I've already experienced what I would consider to be some kind of weird variant. You're coming in at roll 0, right? You didn't experience what I just saw. That's the casino, by the way. The casino doesn't care, right? They're looking at not 38, they're looking at 38 million. But it's interesting that my variant and my 8th roll and your first roll are the same roll. You're looking at a whole different sequence. You might see, only 2 reds and then a bunch of black. I'm going to see 8 reds in a row there. It's interesting. We all have our own variants based on what time we walk up to that table. It's interesting, I think, to look at it that way, because we can describe the same series of events in a couple different ways based on when we entered the game. So that's some fun facts about it. And I think, to kind of bring it home, it's important to remember that variance is the constant. Now, randomness, we said, causes variance, right? But it's the constant thing. It's always the reality. You're never going to see what you expect to see. So we live in a world at the casino where everything is off kilter a little bit. You're not going to be at probability. Now, here's what you can do, right? You can bet on it. And I mean that in both contexts. You can bet on the fact that variance is constant. You can also bet into a variant. And I know that the folks, mathematicians, statisticians, will argue with me on this point. But what I mean by that is, if something good is happening, not that it's likelier to keep happening, but if it's happening, right, you bet on what's coming, kind of a thing. And if you happen to stay in that little sequence for a while you're betting on it, you're going to be good, right? You can bail out on it too, right? If it's going bad for you, right? You're in a negative variant where the variance for you is opposite of what you hoped it was going to be and you're losing a bunch, you can bug out. Okay. Now that doesn't mean that bugging out and coming back in later, you're going to just pick up, somewhere else and be great. You will be in a different variant at that point in time, and it may just be just as bad. It doesn't really matter. You're going to see the amount of outcomes that you're going to see, whether they're 36 today and 36 tomorrow, or whether it's 72 back to back. It doesn't really matter, mathematically speaking. But here, you can bug out if you don't like the variant that you're currently experiencing. Like I always say, I'm getting punched in the face, right? Cover your face, right? If you're hitting home runs, right? Hitting cage bombs, as we say in baseball, stay in the box. Keep whacking, man. That's what it's all about. So you can bet on it, you can bail on it. What you can't do is predict it. And I think that's an important takeaway. You cannot predict what's happening. You're in a variant. And again, you're seeing as I roll the dice here, right? We'll review the outcome there. You can experience the variant, but there's no way to predict what's happening on that table right now. There's no way to know, right? For example, that I'm going to roll 2 or 3 or 4 12s. There's no way to know that the 4 is going to be the dominant number today. There's no way to know that. Okay. Can you recognize it after it happens? Sure. Right. But realize the fact that once you're there playing, you're experiencing it, whether you know it or not, but you're experiencing it in real time. You're not experiencing it looking forward like you would a market trend or something like that. All you can do is be aware of it. Just be aware that's happening and know that it's never going to be true, like probabilities. Know that because you saw 5 6s or 5 7s rather, that the 6th one is not coming. Remember we talked about this whole gambler's fallacy thing? Don't let a variant that you're living in suck you in to make betting decisions based on what you think needs to happen to settle the variant out, right? A variant where there are no 6s or no 7s does not mean a variance coming where there are 7 7s to even it out. We saw that with law of big numbers. That doesn't mean a thing, okay? There's no predictability here, but it is the reality. It is the reality. So when I feel or hear people say, oh, we don't have enough 4s, or we need a 4, or the 7s are running hot, or whatever, they're right in some respects. We are in a variant where that is the case. We have not seen enough 7s in this window of time. It does not mean that they're coming. So be aware of it, but don't try and predict it. Don't try and make betting decisions based on it. So anyway, that's a quick look at the terminology around variance. And let's go review what we did here on the table. Let's look at the actual variance that came up while we were rolling dice over here. And let's see like what the result was. And we can even do it with roulette too and take a look at like, what are the outcome counts based on this? And again, it might be a little bit meaningless to look at those things, but I think it's interesting to see that as many times as you want to do that, that's going to be different every time. And there's not one thing we can do in the middle of that process to go, oh, I see what's happening. Let's move over here. That'll be a discussion for our next session on trending. But in the meantime, let's go review those results from the table. What happened here, right? We have a interesting set of outcomes here. And again, we know we're not going to be perfect 36, but let's look at some of the outliers that we had, right? The 4, look at that. We rolled 3. The 4 was double probability. We should have rolled 3. We rolled 6 4s, right? 3 of them were hard ways, right? We should have had 1 hard 4. We rolled 3 of them, which is insane, right? The 5 was 2 over the expected. The 6 was actually 1 under. 8 was 2 under. 9 was spot on. 10 was a little bit under. The midnight, the 12, we had 3 extra 12s. We had 1 extra yo. So when you take a look at, and actually 3 fewer 7s. And if you look at the variations here, right, at the things that were quote unquote wrong with the outcome, and you can take an easy stab and say, where did they come from, right? We say, well, if you had extra 4s, something else must have been light, right? We take those 3 extra 4s and say, well, that could have been 3 extra 8s, right? Which puts the 8s where they should have been, right? 1 extra 5 could have gone to the 6 and makes the 6. That's what the 6 should have been. The other one goes to the 10, and now the 10's where it should have been. The box would then have been right. And of course, we take these away. We should have had an ace deuce, and we should have had 1 more 5-2 and 2 4 3 7s. You can spread out the whites around and see where we should have ended up. That's variance. That's a variant that we were in for that set of 36 rolls. What does it mean? Nothing. other than the fact that it happens all the time. Okay. And I think to drill that point in, there's no way to have known ahead of this 36 rolls that that was going to happen. 4 midnights. There's no way you could have ever predicted 4 midnights coming in that set of rolls. It's impossible to have seen that. And even after the second one, you're like, hey, there's no way. There's no way he's throwing a third one. Well, guess what? The third one came and so did the other one. It's insanity, right? Can you predict that? No. Unless I was doing something with the dice to make that happen, right? That's a whole different discussion. But in terms of the actual variant that we were in, just recognize that it was one. That you cannot look at this set of 36 rolls and say, well, we're due a couple of sevens here because we're light, right? You're just in a variant where that ain't happening. And to say the sevens have disappeared, we're going to bet harder up here, may have worked this time. That all those whites might have been down here on the horn numbers, and you'd have guessed wrong, and you'd have been right by guessing wrong, because that's what happened. So there it is. There's a look at craps 36 rolls of variance, and you can see kind of how they would have shuffled in otherwise. So here we go. Let's look at the results that we have here from the roulette table, and a couple of interesting things happened during that rollout. One, we had 34 came 34. Where is 34? Here. I'm sorry, the 34 came twice in a row, which was kind of cool. The 29 also, or sorry, the 29 came twice in a row as well. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 numbers repeated, right? So that means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 numbers never came. 13 numbers never came. Interesting, right? So huge variance here on the roulette table. We had a bunch of repeat numbers here, which is pretty cool. Matter of fact, the 34 came 3 times in that series. How did red-black do in the same set of outcomes? Let's pull all the reds up. There's a red, blacks. I'm just going to go down the line here. We'll just stack them all up. There's a black, red, black, black, red. These should be 50-50, right? If everything holds true, they should be 50-50. Let's get them all stacked up. They're going to fall. I think the blacks are going to crush the reds here. There's the reds. These are blacks. Those are reds. Okay, how do we do red versus black? Interesting. The blacks have got 5, 10, 15, 20 exactly, which means the reds have got 5, 10, 15, 17. There you go, right? So a little bit of variance there, red versus black. It's too late to do the high-lows, but you can bet they were a little bit off as well. We had a bunch of missing numbers in there, so of course they're going to be off. The third 12 was really the kind of the monster here on this last roll. But there's roulette, right? Again, you're never going to probably see, never going to see every number get covered once in 37, in our case, single zero wheel, or 38 on a 2-0 wheel. So know that you're living in that world. Now, could you have predicted that that was going to come twice in a row? Hell no. Could you have known that was going to come 3 times today? Hell no. There's no way to know what the variant is. Just know that it's real, right? And again, our brains are going to try and provide some order to the chaos that this actually is, right? I didn't keep track, but at some point in there was probably 4 or 5 reds in a row, 4 or 5 blacks in a row. Doesn't mean one of the others coming next, right? It's just, again, the weirdness that randomness creates, and our brains trying to add some order to it. Our brains trying to find a pattern that fits the crazy that we see. All right, so recapping a little bit there. So we got a little bit of a review of how the craps and the roulette went, and you can see that obviously we're always going to be in some variant. And I think we're always going to be in this world of independent trials where things are random, and that's just the way of life on the table. I put the screen back up, so I wanted you to remember this, okay? Order, chaos, and our need to make sense of the insane. That's the failing point of humans, right? The casino doesn't care. They're not emotionally invested in trying to figure out what's going on. We are. We're emotionally invested trying to figure out what's going on. Because they're not, they can rely on that super long game. The law of large numbers is a big thing for them, right? They play in the world where there's a million trials. You might think you don't, but you actually do. We talked about this already. Let me actually rephrase that last part there. So we've had a couple looks here between craps and roulette at how randomness kind of comes to be, how variance manifests itself on a table. And you can see with every game, it'd be the same thing, right? And I want to come back to this thought here, which is this: we are emotionally connected to it. Humans, we have this need again to make order out of chaos, right? Our brains just can't make sense of the crazy things, the insane things that we see, right? Because we're emotionally attached to it, we find patterns where there are none. We assess variance as or a variant as a thing we can go and attack or recoil from. Okay. On some levels, yeah, you can see it and you can stop playing when you don't like what you see or what you have seen or what's already bit you. That's about the best you can do, right? When you're emotionally connected to it, you can become your own worst enemy. The casino doesn't play that game. They're just playing math. They're just running it forever. And at some point, all those variants that you see in the short run feel like this in the long run. They don't experience variance the same way that you do in your sessions. I mean, they do, but it doesn't matter because they're playing an infinitely long session. Remember our discussion from the law of large numbers and from the discussion that we had on short-term and long-term play. You are playing in the short term, you're simultaneously playing in your own specific pool of long-term outcomes. Don't forget that. Don't forget that. I advise you, be aware of variance. You can bet into a variant. You can bet away from a variant, right? But you cannot predict it. All you can do is recognize the soup that you're walking through, and that's about it. Make a decision based on what you feel your bankroll needs to do, right? If your bankroll needs to be protected, stop playing. If your bankroll is doing great and you're catching a run, stay on the run, right? Stay on the run. But do not make the mistake of trying to assess the chaos that you see with any kind of logic, reason, or order. There just isn't any. And I think that's the biggest takeaway that I can give you today. So there it is. The house always wins. The house always wins. The house always wins. Let's do our best to not be our own worst enemies. With that said, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. Please feel free to leave us a comment here in the comment section for the video, but really better still, join us on Discord. Go to casinogaming.tv and hit the community link in the menu there and join our Discord. That's where me, other YouTubers, and all of our subscribers hang out. We sit there and talk strategy and just BS kind of all day long. It's a great way to get connected and stay connected and kind of interact with the team. Learn about meetups and get-togethers and all that kind of stuff. So with all that said, again, thanks for watching. I really appreciate your time. God bless you, and I will see you in the next one.